So is Michael Jordan finally going to admit that he pushed off Brian Russell? Hello everyone and welcome to Movie Reviews by Josh. My name is Josh Terry and today I'm going to do something a little bit different, something I haven't done on this channel before. I'm actually going to talk about a TV documentary series. If you've been watching Netflix lately and looking at their top 10 list, you might notice that The Last Dance has been one of the top 10 viewed programs over the last little while. It actually came out several months ago. It aired back in April in a 10-part series. It's a 10-part, 10-hour series, but it is now fully available on Netflix, and it seems like a lot more people are checking it out, and people are probably rewatching it too. And to be honest, it's probably worth a rewatch. Overall, I mean, my quick review of it is that it's definitely good and entertaining and interesting and worth watching, but maybe not for all the reasons that you might suspect. Okay, so basically, The Last Dance again is a multi-episode documentary series that, on the surface, tells the story of the 1997-1998 Chicago Bulls, who were competing for the last of their 6 titles in the 1990s with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and everybody. But it's really not that, and that in and of itself is not a 10-hour series. It's compiled from footage that was actually filmed at the time that was locked up in a vault for 20 years because Michael Jordan hadn't signed off on it, and he was the one who granted them permission to film at the time. And it took a long while before he was able to allow them to use it to make this documentary. So on the surface, the series is about the 97-98 Bulls. But in actuality, it does a couple more things that I think are a little bit more interesting to consider. The first of those is pretty obvious because as you watch each episode, it toggles back and forth between the 1997-1998 storyline and Michael Jordan's career with the Bulls up through that point. So even though it's presented as a Bulls documentary series, it's really effectively a Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player of all time documentary, right? And which even at that is not to say that if you're not a huge Jordan fan, or even if you're not a huge NBA fan, that this isn't for you. Now, 10 hours is quite a bit to get into if you don't already have some kind of stake in the matter. But one of the things that I really enjoyed and liked about Last Dance is the way that it's really a time capsule. Because yes, it's about the NBA, yes, it's about Michael Jordan, yes, it's about the Bulls. But in another way, in a more subtle way, it's a documentary about the 1980s and the 1990s, specifically with sports and culture that way, but it kind of expands beyond that. And if, like myself, you grew up during that time through the 80s and 90s, it is a lot of fun and really, really interesting to see how everything plays out, because these are events that you witnessed, that you know, even if you weren't a big basketball fan, you're going to see little things here and there that kind of nod to what was going on at the time. And so I would definitely recommend it, even if you aren't a big Jordan fan, a big Bulls fan. For me and for a lot of my friends and contemporaries, it was kind of an interesting experience because, you know, growing up as a big Utah Jazz fan, you'd think, well, this is going to be kind of a big, you know, this is going to be a pain, this is going to be really painful to watch. I'm happy to report that even as a lifelong Jazz fan, I didn't find it terribly painful. I think I've gotten old enough and wise enough that I can kind of enjoy the perspective and enjoy it for what it was, and, you know, don't worry too much about whether Brian Russell was fouled on the last historic shot that Jordan hit to win the series in '98. Sorry if that's giving it, maybe I should have said spoiler alert there, but probably not, right? No, this was, on a personal level, this was a really interesting series for me to watch because I always had a very complicated relationship with the Bulls growing up, not just because I was a Jazz fan, but also because I actually lived in Chicago during the first series in 96, 97. The summer of 97, I was living in Chicago, and so that was quite interesting to kind of have the whole Jazz Bulls thing going on. And so, but then even years before that, while I was still a Jazz fan, Michael Jordan really was a creative catalyst for me. Growing up, I did a lot of drawing and a lot of artwork, and so I spent a lot of years, especially in junior high, trying to draw the perfect Michael Jordan and wishing that I had enough money to save up and get, you know, the Air Jordan shoes and all that. And eventually, of course, I did. The 6s were the first pair that I actually owned. For those keeping track at home, maybe one of you, which I don't know why, but anyway, Last Dance is definitely worth checking out, and though I haven't sat down to watch it a second time, I'm guessing it would probably be worth a rewatch as well. Again, not just because it's a great series about the Bulls, or even because it's a great documentary about Michael Jordan. In fact, some of the criticism from other critics, not myself, is that it tends to be a little one-sided since Jordan was actually involved in its production, and so, well, how critical is it going to be? My take on that is that it doesn't paint him in an entirely good light. It definitely shows the warts and all, and it's not quite the expose and quite the behind-the-scenes revelation that I think some might suspect. I think given the publicity for it, I might have been a little bit underwhelmed in that sense, but it was still very good and very interesting, and I felt like it gave a more honest portrayal than I felt coming away from Jordan's Hall of Fame speech back in 2009. So if that kind of gives you the story arc, big Jordan fan when I was 12 and 13 years old, kind of tapered off a little bit into adulthood. 2009, the Hall of Fame speech, just kind of, wow, that's something deserving of a review on its own. But this seemed to kind of contextualize and clarify a little bit more of that. And yeah, I mean, it could be a little bit more in terms of like straight journalism and a pure documentary, but for what it is and for, what people are looking for, I'd recommend it. I'd give it probably a good solid 3.5 stars out of 4 as a documentary series. Now, it is, though it's a TV series, it would draw an R rating for language almost exclusively. There's really nothing else too objectionable in it, unless, again, you're a long-suffering Jazz, Orlando, Phoenix, Lakers, Pistons, basically a fan of anybody in the league who had to face off against Michael Jordan in the 1990s. That might be a little more painful, so that could be deserving of the rating as well. So what's your favorite Michael Jordan memory? Go ahead and post it in the comments. So thanks for watching. Again, my name is Josh Terry. This is Movie Reviews by Josh. Be sure to subscribe on your way out and keep notifications on, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.